They say love is patient, that it endures all things. But what happens when the thing it has to endure is silence? This is the story of Anna, a wife who waited, a woman who promised to stay faithful, to hold on, to believe. When David left for war, Anna stood at the train station, trying not to cry. He kissed her forehead and said, "I'll be back before you know it. I promise." But weeks turned into months. Months stretched into years. She still kept the house clean, still made dinner for two, still folded his side of the blanket every morning. At first, she wrote letters, dozens, telling him about the garden, the leaking faucet, how much she missed the sound of his laugh in the evenings. But no letter came back. No voice. No signal. Just the echo of hope getting quieter. Neighbors came and went. Friends stopped asking. Even the postman stopped offering sympathetic glances. And still, she waited. Until one day someone knocked. It wasn't David. It was James, the new neighbor from across the street. At first, it was nothing. He needed a wrench. She had one. He brought it back with a smile. The next time, he helped fix her porch light. Then one evening, it rained. He brought over an umbrella. She didn't plan it. Didn't mean to start laughing again. Didn't expect to find warmth in someone else's voice. But loneliness is a quiet hunger. And when someone brings you light after years in the dark, sometimes you forget that it's not the sun. The kiss happened quickly, and it ended just as fast. She stepped back, breathless. "I can't," she said. James nodded. "I know. I'm sorry." And then the letter came. "Annie, I'm alive. They got me. I lost my arm. But I'm coming home. I kept my promise. I'm still yours." Her heart broke in places she didn't know were whole. David came back, smiling, broken, beautiful. And she welcomed him with open arms. But at night, she stared at the ceiling, wondering if love meant never making mistakes or choosing to rebuild after them. This is not a story of a perfect woman. This is not the story of a perfect love. This is a story of what it means to be human, to feel lonely, to fall, to be forgiven, and to forgive yourself. Part 1. The Quiet Years. It started with the sound of the clock. Tick, tock. Every morning at 6:35, Anna would wake up to the exact same noise. Not because of an alarm, but because her mind had learned to fill in the gap that David used to occupy. He used to make the coffee. Pour tout mug. One with cream and sugar, one black. Her cup was always waiting on the right side of the counter. Now she made her own, but still placed his mug on the counter too. Empty. It wasn't about denial. It was about habit. And habits, once formed with love, are hard to erase with absence. She went to work, taught art to a group of wide-eyed third graders. They asked about her husband sometimes. "Is he a hero?" they would say. She always smiled and nodded. Yes, a hero who sends no letters, makes no calls, but still lives in every corner of her home. After work, she stopped by the market, bought 2 tomatoes, 1 onion, a bag of rice. She cooked enough for 2 and packed the second plate into the fridge. For months, she told herself she was saving it for tomorrow. Eventually, she admitted she just couldn't bear the sight of a single plate. Evenings were the worst. The silence would come in waves. The kind of quiet that wraps around your chest and squeezes, not loudly but persistently. So she wrote, "Dear David, the ceiling leaks now. You always said we should get the roof looked at. The maple tree in the yard is taller than the house. It drops leaves all over the porch. I saw a movie last night. You would have hated it. It made me laugh, and I felt guilty for that. I miss you. Love always. Anna. She had a whole box of letters. Never sent. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know where to send them anymore. War has a way of swallowing people whole. She went to church sometimes, sat in the back pew, closed her eyes. She didn't pray for his safety anymore. She just prayed for clarity. To know if he was alive. To know if she should wait. To know if she was still a wife or a widow without a funeral. Months passed, and then years, and the clock kept ticking. Part 2. The Neighbor. The first time James knocked, it was raining. She opened the door, unsure of who'd be calling at that hour. He stood there holding a toolbox, hair wet, smile sheepish. "Sorry to bother you," he said. "I think my water heater just quit on me. Do you have a wrench I could borrow?" Anna nodded. No words. Just a quiet motion for him to wait. He stood awkwardly in the doorway while she disappeared into the garage. When she returned, he thanked her twice. Once before taking it. Once more after. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. A few days later, she heard someone fiddling near her porch. James again. This time with a stepladder, replacing the porch light. "It flickers at night," he explained, not waiting for an invitation. Figured I'd lend a hand. Anna didn't argue. It felt nice. The thoughtfulness. The simplicity. Then came the muffins. One Sunday morning. Left in a tin on her steps. Banana walnut. Her favorite, though she hadn't told anyone in years. She took them inside. Made tea. Ate 2. And cried over the third. It wasn't love. It wasn't even friendship, not yet. But it was presence. And when you've lived with only absence for years, presence feels like a gift wrapped in gold. Soon, they spoke more often. Small talk at first. Weather. Groceries. House repairs. Then longer conversations. Books. Music. Childhood memories. James had a quiet sadness in his eyes. He never talked about his past. She never asked. There was a comfort in that unspoken agreement. Two people who understood grief without trading details. He never pried about David. But she caught him looking at the empty cup she always poured. Once, she caught herself laughing. Loudly. Freely. And stopped immediately. Guilt crept in like a shadow. How dare she smile? How dare she feel joy when David might be suffering, or worse? But James never expected anything. Never crossed a line. Until one night, when the storm rolled in again. The kind that shook windows and rattled nerves. He showed up at her door with a lantern. "You okay?" he asked. She hesitated. And then nodded. "I will be." He stayed a while. They talked. Drank tea. Sat in the quiet. No touching. No flirting. Just silence. But not the heavy kind. It was the kind that said, "You're not alone anymore." And for the first time in years, Anna went to bed without the clock feeling like a hammer. Part 3. The line crossed. It wasn't one moment. It was a series of glances that lasted a little too long. Of smiles that carried questions instead of comfort. Of nights that ended too slowly. Of silences that buzzed louder than any word ever could. Anna didn't know when she started checking the clock, hoping James might pass by. She told herself she was being neighborly. That kindness didn't equal betrayal. But deep down she knew. The heart knows what it wants before the mind admits it. One Thursday evening, she made too much soup. She told herself it was accidental. She told herself offering James a bowl was just polite. He accepted with a soft smile and stayed for dinner. They talked about everything and nothing, the kind of nothing that wraps around two people like a blanket. When he stood to leave, she walked him to the door. He paused.
She did too. It was a heartbeat.
A hesitation, a breath drawn and not released. His eyes met hers. Not demanding, not pleading, just open. She leaned in first. The kiss was brief, gentle, testing. And then she pulled away, a sharp inhale catching in her throat. "I'm sorry," she whispered. James looked down. "Me too." He didn't ask to come back. And she didn't ask him to. But he did. The next day.
And the next.
The touches were small. A hand brushing hers. A knee under the table. A glance that said too much. They never spoke of David. But his absence became the third person in every room. Anna hated herself for wanting someone who wasn't her husband. But she also hated herself for not feeling like a wife anymore. The guilt was thick. It clung to her skin, her breath, her voice. She cried in the shower. At night. In the grocery aisle. She screamed into her pillow, whispered apologies to the air. But the kisses grew longer. The hugs tighter. The ache deeper. Until one night, he touched her cheek. She closed her eyes and let it happen. Part 4. The letter. The sky was gray that morning. Not stormy. Not clear. Just undecided. Like her. Anna stood at the sink, staring at her reflection in the window. Her eyes didn't look like hers anymore. Not the same softness. Not the same certainty. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was the postman, holding a single envelope. Her heart stuttered. She hadn't seen his handwriting in years. She thanked the postman, barely able to speak. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The letter was brief. "Annie, I'm alive. Got caught in a blast. Lost my right arm. But I'm coming home. I think about you every day. I kept your picture in my helmet. It's faded, but you're still beautiful. I'm not the same, but I kept my promise. I'm still yours. Love. David." The world didn't spin. It stopped. Time fractured. The letter fell from her hands as she slid to the floor. She didn't cry. Not at first. Just sat there, staring at nothing, breathing like it hurt. Then came the tears. Violent. Hot. Shaking her whole body. He was alive.
Alive.
And coming home. But she had betrayed him. The guilt came in waves, crashing hard, over and over. Her mind raced with scenes she couldn't erase. Hands that weren't David's. Lips that didn't belong to her husband. She screamed. A sound from a place so deep, even she didn't know it existed. James knocked that evening. She didn't answer. He texted, "Everything okay?" She turned off her phone. The next few days were a blur. She cleaned the house like her life depended on it. Scrubbed the walls. Washed every linen. As if cleanliness could absolve her. She didn't eat. Slept little. She read the letter over and over, until the ink felt etched into her bones. And she wrote one back. "David, I got your letter. I can't breathe. You're alive. I don't know how to say what I need to say, but I have to try. I haven't been the wife you deserved. I let grief twist me. Let loneliness sink into my skin. I did something terrible, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I'll be at the station. No matter what you decide, I'll be there. Love. Anna." She mailed it that day, and waited again. Not like before. Not with hope, but with fear. Part 5. The Return. The train pulled in 5 minutes late. Anna stood on the platform, dressed in a navy coat he'd never seen. Hair shorter now, eyes older. She held nothing in her hands. No sign. No flowers. Just her own breath, shallow and fast. Around her, people cheered, hugged,
Cried.
arms wrapped around bodies returned from faraway nightmares. And then she saw him, David, leaning slightly, moving slower, one arm gone, the right sleeve pinned and folded neatly. But his eyes, still his eyes. He scanned the crowd until he found her. They didn't run. They didn't cry. They just walked toward each other slow, like the weight of years made every step sacred. She reached for him first, gently placing her hands on his face. He leaned in. "Hi," he whispered. "Hi," she breathed back. For a moment, they stood like that. Not as husband and wife, not yet, but as two souls who'd lived a lifetime apart. She drove him home. The house was spotless,
Silent.
familiar, in all the wrong ways. David sat in the armchair he used to hate. She made tea, not knowing what else to do with her hands. "Feel smaller," he said, looking around. "No," she said softly. "We just grew." They didn't talk much that first day. He asked how school was. She asked about the doctors. Both avoided the middle. That night, they shared a bed again. Not like before. No intimacy. Just shared space. Shared breath. She laid awake, staring at the ceiling. He did too. Two hearts. Beating inches apart. Worlds away. At some point, he reached for her hand. And she let him.
He squeezed gently.
She squeezed back. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a beginning. Part 6. The Confession. It happened 3 nights later. David was sitting by the window, staring at the garden he hadn't seen in years. The maple tree had grown taller. The fence leaned more than it used to. Anna stood in the kitchen doorway, watching him. She'd rehearsed it 100 times, and none of it felt right. He turned to her, sensing the weight in the air. "What is it?" he asked. She walked over, sat across from him. The same chair she used when she wrote letters she never sent. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. His shoulders tensed. She looked at her hands. "I didn't think you were coming back," she whispered. "I didn't know if you were alive. I didn't know if I was still your wife or a ghost wearing her ring." David said nothing. "I didn't plan it," she continued. "It was slow. It was quiet. It wasn't physical. Not at first." His breath caught. "I was lonely, David. So lonely I forgot what my own voice sounded like. And someone showed up. Someone kind." He looked away. "I kissed him," she said. "More than once." Silence. She waited. For yelling. For a slammed door.
For the end.
But he didn't move. He just stared out the window. She felt her heart crack. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry." Still, he said nothing. Minutes passed. Finally, he stood. Walked to the hallway.
Paused.
Then said softly, without turning around, "I didn't die over there, so we could pretend nothing happened here." And he walked into the bedroom. Anna stayed at the table all night.
And cried.
Part 7. The Distance. The days that followed were quieter than any silence she'd ever known. David spoke less. He ate.
He showered.
He slept on his side of the bed. But the warmth between them was gone, replaced by something colder than absence. Disappointment. Anna moved through the house like a guest. Every room reminded her of what they had lost and what she had broken. She made him coffee every morning, just like before. He drank it, but never said thank you. He read in the evenings, glasses low on his nose, never lifting his eyes when she walked in. Once, she reached for his hand across the table. He didn't pull away, but he didn't hold on either. Some nights, he left the bedroom entirely, retreating to the couch without a word. She lay awake, listening to the sound of his breathing in the other room. The distance between them felt like another war. Not of guns, but of grief. She didn't press him,
Didn't beg.
she gave him space, unsure if it was mercy or cowardice. She wrote again, not to him, to herself. Letters she didn't intend to send. Pages filled with remorse and memories, and questions with no answers. How do you fix a heart you were supposed to protect? How do you say, I still love you, to someone you've wounded so deeply? Sometimes, David would glance at her when he thought she wasn't looking, and she wondered what he saw. Was she still his wife? Or just the woman who waited and then failed? The quiet stretched into weeks. Until one evening, as she cleared the dinner table, David spoke. His voice was hoarse. Do you still think about him? She froze.
No, she said.
Not since the day you came back. He nodded. Just once. Then stood. And walked past her. But that night he stayed in the bed. And she cried herself to sleep beside him. Part 8. The Bridge. The change was so small, Anna almost missed it. A question asked over breakfast. Do you still paint? She blinked.
No, she said.
I haven't in years. You should, David replied, then sipped his coffee. That evening, she found her old brushes. Dusty, brittle. She cleaned them.
Slowly, carefully.
The next day, a canvas appeared by the kitchen table. David had bought it. Quietly, without a word. She didn't ask how he knew where to find one. She just said thank you. It wasn't sudden. There were no grand gestures, no speeches. But the silence began to shift. He asked her to join him on a walk, just around the block. The air was crisp.
She said yes.
Their arms brushed. He didn't pull away. At home, she made his favorite stew. He said, "This tastes like before," and smiled. A real one. One evening, she found him in the garden, pruning the overgrown hedge with one hand. He looked ridiculous. Determined. She laughed. He looked up and laughed with her. They stayed out there until the sun disappeared. That night, he reached for her hand again. This time, he held on longer. Later, in bed, he whispered, I was angry. Not just at you. At the world. At the war. At the time we lost. She turned to him. I was angry too. At myself. For not being strong enough. He touched her cheek. You were strong. You're still here. They lay together in the dark. No promises. No plans. Just the sound of two hearts finding rhythm again. The next morning, Anna stood in front of the canvas. She picked up a brush and began. Part 9. The Forgiveness. It came on a Tuesday. A day like any other. The mail arrived. The cat from next door wandered onto their porch. The coffee was slightly too bitter. David was fixing a drawer that wouldn't close right. Anna stood in the doorway, watching him. She had been painting again. Every day. Small things. The kitchen window. A cup. His hand. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. Something in her broke gently. She walked over. Sat beside him. I've waited for the right moment, she said. But I don't think it exists. David stopped working. Looked at her. I need to ask you something, she whispered. Not for closure. Just because I need to hear it. He nodded, waiting. Can you forgive me? Silence followed. Not heavy. Just full. I already have, he said. Her eyes filled with tears.
But I didn't deserve it, she said.
No, he said. But neither did I. I left you alone in a world we built together. I let the silence speak louder than love. She shook her head. You were fighting to stay alive. And you were fighting to feel alive, he replied. They sat there, side by side, not touching. But we're still here, he said. That has to mean something. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I forgive you too, she whispered. He kissed the top of her head. It wasn't the kind of kiss that started something. It was the kind that healed. That night, they lit a candle at the table. A small flame, but steady. Part 10. The New Beginning. Spring came late that year. The trees in their neighborhood bloomed slower than usual. But one morning, Anna woke to find the first yellow crocus pushing through the earth near their mailbox. She smiled. Inside, David was making breakfast. Just toast and eggs. But the pan sizzled with a kind of warmth she hadn't felt in years. They sat together by the window. Sunlight streaming in. A canvas rested on the easel behind them, unfinished, but alive. David reached across the table, took her hand, and said, Let's take a trip. Where? She asked, surprised. Anywhere we haven't been, he said. Somewhere we can start fresh. She looked at him. Not the soldier who left, not the man who came back broken, but the partner who stayed. The man who chose to rebuild with her. Okay, she whispered. Later that day, they walked through the local bookstore, choosing novels they'd read aloud to each other. They painted the guest room together.
Pale blue.
Laughed when they got more paint on each other than the walls. Some nights, they danced in the kitchen. No music, just movement. And slowly, the house became a home again. One evening, Anna looked at him and said, We made it, didn't we? He nodded. Not perfectly, but we made it. And that was enough. This wasn't a storybook ending. There were scars, visible and hidden. There were days that still hurt. But they had found their way back to each other. Not by forgetting the past, but by choosing the future. Together. Theirs was not a perfect love, but it was a true one. And sometimes that's all we really need.